Welcome to the Tarryn Reeves Show, where your journey to empowerment takes center stage. I'm your host, Tarryn Reeves, best-selling author and publishing expert. Together, we'll dive into the hearts and minds of visionaries, disruptors, and trailblazing leaders to explore the most compelling and thought-provoking ideas in life, business, and marketing. Let's inspire, impact, and ignite. This is the Tarryn Reeves Show. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Tarryn Reeves Show. Today, I am joined by one of my beautiful authors, Raewyn Guerrero. How are you, Ray? So excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Tarryn. I am delighted to be part of your show.
Awesome. Now, I'm going to give Ray a beautiful introduction because she's just such an amazing lady and a shining light in the health world. So Ray is a functional health coach and CBT hypnotherapist. She's committed to helping you eliminate the guesswork around your stress so that you can fine-tune your biochemistry and become the CEO of not only your health, but your life. So important. By offering a personalized roadmap for how to eat, think, sleep, and move through the insights gained from functional labs, she's set to change the face of healthcare and create a well world. What a beautiful vision. After years of chasing symptoms to address her own anxiety and IBS, she founded WellWorks, her online functional medicine practice and corporate wellness consultancy, with a team of practitioners who share her vision of self-care as healthcare. While leading wellness at Barclays PLC between 2011 and 2016, Raewyn was a member of the UK All-Party Parliamentary Group for Mindfulness in the Workplace, and she's been featured in the Huffington Post, the CW Network, and on numerous podcasts discussing a nutrition and psychology approach for sleep, panic attacks, and anti-aging. Wow, Ray, that is such an amazing biography. You've done so much with your life and such an important mission, changing the face of healthcare. Now, you have written in a book, a multi-author book with us here at Four Eagles Publishing that is called Corporate Dropouts. I'd love for you to give our listeners and our readers a sneak peek into what you shared in that chapter.
Thank you so much for having me and for allowing me this opportunity to talk about the chapter, because a lot of people have been curious. I shared it with a few of my fellow functional diagnostic nutrition colleagues, and they were like, oh, well, what does this have to do with what you do now? And I was like, oh, everything. That was my come to Jesus moment, Damascus moment, whatever you want to call it. So that the chapter in the book is about, it's not exactly a day. It was like there was a build up to when I had the realization that I needed to change my life and do something completely different and live in a completely different, more aligned and in tune with who I really, rather than the whole being suited and booted and running around on the tube and coming from an island and then making it in the big city and all that sort of stuff that you become preoccupied with when you first leave a small country and then head to a city like London, which is 10 million people. The story that I tell in the book is about that awakening, because there was a moment where I was like, I have to do something different now. Like it's time.
How did you feel in that moment when you had that realization?
Terrified.
Yes. I think that's such a good way to describe that feeling, right?
There was definitely terror. I didn't want to tell my mother because whenever I had brought up that I wasn't really happy, she just always went back to me with, but what about your pension? That's what people think about older people. That's what they worry about. You've got this really stable, awesome job. Why would you give it up? Why would you throw it away? I think it was more like, why would you work so hard to get there? It's taken you 10 years and then you just want to walk away. What are you thinking? So I didn't actually tell her anything for a very long time.
Yeah, our parents, they only want the best for us, but I can't live like this anymore. And it's such a...
I won't have a pension if I'm dead because I've had a stroke.
Exactly.
I'm not going to have one if I've had a stroke.
Yeah, exactly. And that stress, that unhappiness is so toxic to our health. Can you talk a bit more about that?
That's why I do what I do now, because I've realized we have spent so much time in Western culture chasing this dragon, like this thing that we're going to get the nicest car or the nicest house or the nicest, I don't know, laptop, the best vacations. And it's always like the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But there's never anything that satisfies that, whatever that void is that we're trying to fill. And people run around looking for promotions, looking for, I don't know, love, or maybe whatever it is that they're chasing after, it becomes empty. Because if you haven't found that sort of that alignment within yourself of who you are and what you're doing, and if that isn't in sync with your purpose, then you'll always have that void, that feeling of lack, that feeling like something's missing, like I should be happy, but I'm not. And there's that song, Once in a Lifetime by the Talking Heads. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. I love that song. And David, the music video is all about, you may find yourself with a beautiful home and a beautiful car and he talks about having a beautiful wife. And you'll be like, how did I get here? But because you've gone after all the traditional things that people have told you you're going to be happy with, and then you're not happy. So where does happiness come from? And then how do you actually find it? Do you find it? Is it just, or do you have to settle into learning how to accept and love yourself and just realizing there's nothing to chase after anymore? Whatever it is that you're looking for is inside of you. And very often what I see is that people who keep chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, they're the ones who just end up burning out. And their symptoms are a manifestation of the fact that they haven't paid attention to what's been going on with their bodies, and they've been living like robots. They can just go on forever like machines, not realizing we need to power down. We need sleep. We need clean air, clean water, loving relationships, touch. All these things are obviously movement and good, clean food. These things are vital because if we don't pay attention to them, then they suck our vitality away. And we may be able to carry on for a temporary period where we're like channeling through life, but eventually you will crash and burn. They always say, if you don't make time for wellness, you'll be having to make time for illness. So that you asked about toxicity, that's in essence what it's about.
Yeah, it's so true. Having been on that journey myself, and obviously a lot of the women inside the Corporate Dropouts book, it is just not worth it. Just not worth it. And we need to realize, when are we going to draw that line in the sand and ask for help, receive help, or help ourselves, or a combination of all three, right? It's often a combination of all three. Now, you grew up in the Caribbean. Tell me a little bit about what that was like and whether or not it influenced your decision to move to London or go into a big corporate wellness job. Tell me more.
What's interesting about what I ended up doing in London is what my dad used to do in the Caribbean. So small island, and he was running a well-being center for an insurance company. So he actually used to travel quite a lot. He spent quite a lot of time in Texas and in Canada working with bigger insurance companies and bringing back whatever he learned back to the island. And he opened one of the first 24-hour pharmacies. Actually, he opened the first 24-hour pharmacy in the Caribbean. So I've been around, being around him is extremely inspiring. He's in his late 60s and he is such a powerhouse. He has no intention of stopping, slowing down. He's always creating, always building something new. Right now, he's starting a supplement company, being around, and he's helping a lot of people come off of medication by using plants that he's growing and encapsulating them. So he's helping people reduce blood pressure, reduce blood sugar, come off their diabetes meds, all this sort of stuff. And he's been into herbs for a very, very long time and growing plants, even though he had this whole corporate life as well. And I feel like in so many ways, I've mirrored exactly what happened to him. He had a come to Jesus moment too, where he actually got really sick. And then that was what moved him into a different direction. For me, it was the same thing. Like I got to London, I wanted to study psychology. I wanted to help people understand that they didn't need to become dependent on medication in order to be able to deal with their anxiety. My grandfather, unfortunately, suffered terribly from anxiety and was dependent on medications. There's my husband coming home.
That's okay.
And because of the dependency on the medication, it led to dementia, a whole bunch of other things. So that's why I moved to London, because I wanted to study in one of the best cities on earth and go to Goldsmiths College at the University of London. So that was definitely growing up in the Caribbean, seeing so much ill health around me, people who were young and just resigning themselves to being, oh, well, I'll just do what the doctor tells me and take this pill for the rest of my life. And it was a huge influence and helped me move in the direction of where I needed to get to.
Yeah, so interesting. Your dad sounds like an amazing, amazing man. I love the sound of what he's doing. Okay, Now, you did work in corporate wellness. You worked for Barclays Bank. I'm from Zimbabwe originally, and we had Barclays in Zimbabwe in Africa. So it's a very big, very well-known company. Tell me what it was like working as the corporate wellness manager in those types of environments.
Well, that was an interesting time because well-being wasn't really, it was right after the subprime mortgage crisis. 2008 had happened. There was tons of people dealing with stress, burning out. The head of HR at the time, he was my boss. And I remember telling him, I said, look, we need to do something because we have an epidemic showing up right now of people crying in the bathrooms, burning the candle at both ends and burning out. And that's been very, what's the best word to describe that? It was an eye opener for me to see that there was this real tangible situation that needed to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. And I decided to single-handedly take it on, which was probably not the smartest thing because I thought, oh, I've got this psychology training. I've got this hypnotherapy and CBT background. I'm going to be able to do this. But in the end, being a one-woman show was very, very hard. And getting the buy-in that you needed in order to move the needle became extremely difficult for me, trying to get things to move it ahead. And I think in many ways, I was definitely ahead of my time because I was looking at things with this very holistic, like nutrition isn't just not about losing weight. It's actually about fuel for your cells. And people weren't getting that. They just thought, well, let's do another step challenge. Let's do another fruit bowl. You're sort of missing the point on a lot of this stuff. So what was it like in that environment? I think it was a little bit hard for someone like me I don't fit into a lot of boxes. And I remember my line manager at one point saying, I don't really know exactly which lane you fit into. And I'm like, I don't, because health is not about a lane. It's all encompassing. It's about your whole life. It's not just about nutrition. It's not just about fitness.
So I love that you don't fit into any boxes and into any lane because that's the human experience, right? We are not made to fit into boxes. We are holistic beings. And I love that you took on that challenge, even though it was the expense of your own health. I think you would have made a massive difference. And you weren't just trying to change people's health. You were trying to change a whole corporate environment. And that takes time. It takes an army. It takes a society.
No, it literally, it did. And so it's really interesting that you brought that up because community, I think, is probably the biggest, in addition to obviously all the things that you can do on an individual level, that macro level is so important and so vital for changing behavior. You are the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with. If you are hanging out with people who are running, eating well, and practicing meditation and going to sleep at 9 p.m., then you're going to be like them and you're probably going to live longer than people who aren't doing those things and picking up fast food or whatever it is, eating all the pies. So, and if you're in an environment where on a Friday, everybody buys donuts, what's going to happen? You're going to eat the donuts just like everybody else. And if they all go out drinking and stay out till 2 a.m, you're going to be it's just inevitable. Otherwise, you will stand out like I did because I'm like, I don't really want to stay out all night.
And then there's something wrong with you, right? Then it triggers that because we're pack animals. Let's be real about it. We're animals and we're pack animals. So we tend to follow what everyone else is doing because it triggers our innate biological response, right? It's the need to fit in. Otherwise, we will die. We'll be cast out from the tribe and we won't survive. And we may think that we've evolved a very long way from where we used to be in cavemen and cavewoman times, but realistically, we're still very much there. Can you speak about that?
Like I said, from an evolutionary perspective, community is so important because you mentioned we're pack animals. Humans do best when they don't function in isolation. Some of the cultures where people live for the longest, what they call the blue zones, they are people who have very strong ties to community, to extended family, to living with relatives for very long periods of time. Because one, they're being cared for. 2, they're passing on wisdom between generations because they're closer, just in geography and proximity. And then obviously there is that whole, I was talking about human touch is so vital. People who live in isolation don't tend to do as well as people who are happily partnered. One of the key tenets of being resilient, of being a resilient human that you learn in positive psychology is that people who are happily partnered and who have a strong sense of purpose and community, they will live longer and they are less likely to suffer from things like anxiety or depression because they have got those strong communal ties. So in an environment where corporate work, it's more competitive and less collaborative. And I would love to see that shift where people become more like, how do we hold hands and sing Kumbaya? How do we do that and actually work together rather than trying to work against each other or one up each other all the time? So I feel like that sense of working collaboratively, working in community, working with people who are on a similar journey or who you want to support or who can support you, that's always going to be a key feature of any healthy individual, well-adjusted individual. And it's why I actually created a free online community. I've got about 500 members in it right now. It's called Well World. And the idea behind it is exactly that, because the strength of community is so important for helping people stick to good, healthier habits.
That community is amazing, you guys. If you're listening or watching this, please head on over to the Facebook group and join Well World, because you'll get so much value out of it. And it's going to increase your health. What could go wrong, right? What have you got to lose? Now, I'm wondering, what was your biggest learning from your time in corporate? Can we distill it down to one lesson or a couple of lessons?
Yeah, listen to your gut, always. I really think if we had to put it down to one thing, it would be like, never, ever ignore that little voice that's telling you, this isn't right for you. Do something else. And you, unfortunately, for whatever reason, we have to let things play out, maybe because we're thinking, oh no, I can make this work. I can fit the square peg into the round hole. And you do that for years.
Yes.
And if something's saying walk, or something's telling you, you deserve more, you deserve better, you deserve to be happy, and this isn't what happiness really looks or feels like, listen to it, pay attention, and find time for stillness. Like, I really think the busyness of being in a corporate environment is quite detrimental to that voice that you should be listening to. That's your internal GPS. And if you are constantly being bombarded by, if we think of like traffic and stuff being thrown at you all the time and blaring lights and blaring horns, it's very hard to find that internal GPS and figure out where to go next. So making time for stillness and listening to that. And my whole moniker is around the gut-brain connection. So when I say listen to your gut, it's twofold, right? It's literally like, yes, pay attention to what you're putting in there, but also pay attention to the signals that it's giving you back.
Yes. So tell me a bit about your business then, about how it works and the functional labs and things like that. Tell me about it.
Great question, Tarryn, because this is one that people are often confused. They're like, don't we have to come physically see you? And I was like, no, this is before COVID. You don't actually have to physically see us. Our labs can be ordered from, if you're in the US or the UK, and we've got a hookup in Australia as well, we can get those labs to people in any of those 3 continents very, very easily. We use couriers. And what happens is that you collect your samples at home. We don't generally take blood very often. We use saliva, urine, stool. And what we look at are markers that are very different to what your traditional doctor would look for, because they're looking for blood and they're looking for full-blown dis-ease. So they want to match a pill to, because they're thinking, okay, we found the symptom or whatever's happening downstream, and we can now manage that symptom with this medication. But we're looking at being much more proactive and looking for dysfunction as opposed to disease. Because if we can figure out where the dysfunction originates, where the weak links in the chain, then we can correct them, sometimes reverse them. In fact, very often I like to say we can reverse a lot of things that have gone awry. It might take longer in some people, if depending on how long they have been unwell or not feeling at their best. For something like burnout, which can show up in all manners, all sorts of ways, like it can be gut issues, it can be anxiety, it can be exhaustion. Someone saying, I can't get out of bed, it takes me 3 hours, or I try to go to sleep at night, but I'm waking up 2 a.m, which is very, very common for people with fatigue issues or being tired but wired. And they've got a lot of problems with leaky gut and leaky brain and potential infections. And we screen for all of these things, not to diagnose, but for us to identify where are your hidden stressors and how can we reduce them. And stress, in the context that I'm using it, it doesn't refer to emotional stress only. It refers to if the body is under stress, if there's a chemical stress that we can address. So how the business works is that we start off with the lab work, and then that informs what we do next. So it informs, we use this protocol called DRESS: diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplements, but it is completely personalized based off of the lab work. And people meet with me or my team to begin with. And because we've got a medical doctor on board with us, and 4 nutritional therapists, 2 in the UK and 2 in the US. And then myself as the coach and the mindset person. And we coach people to success within 90 days. And like I said, 90 days can be enough for some people. And if, for other people who've been going through something for a very long time and their bodies need more time, it might take a little bit longer. It might be a year. But I always say, however long you have been unwell, give your body at least a month, but ideally 3 months. So if it's been 5 years, you're thinking 15 months to really turn things around.
Amazing. I find that so refreshing an approach. And I love that you are able to do this virtually, because I hate going to the doctors. I'm like, no, the environment just sucks. I don't like all the energy flying up around in there and the fluorescent lights and everything, smell.
Oh my.
It's so bad. It's so not conducive to a well environment, right? It's like, hang on, what's going on here? Something's missing. And so you have people available in Australia, the US, and the UK. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Amazing. If somebody was living in a country not noted in those 3, would they be able to work with you?
They could, but it would be very difficult to get the labs, and it could get quite expensive because you'd have to use couriers that do overnighting. That can get a little bit pricey. There's already an investment involved, so it would probably be just a little bit more, a little extra added on to it. But I have a friend who trained with me, and she lived in Dubai for about 5 years, and she was using couriers exclusively, and same thing, had to overnight pretty much everything. And it did get pricey. It was pricey for her clients.
So for those of you listening or watching who are not in those 3 countries, the US, the UK, and Australia, I think you'll still find a lot of value inside the Well World Facebook group from Ray to turn your health around. And there are other people who I'm sure can do these labs and things in your country if you just find out about it, go and have a look and start on that journey to turning your health around. Now, Ray, who do you love to work with? Who is your most favorite client?
I love women who are they are go-getters. They are juggling lots of things. People who have a ton on their plate, but who have got that self-awareness that they deserve more. And that they're like, you know what, I can't actually continue in this vein, but I want to do everything that I possibly can to turn things around. So whatever it is that you tell me to do, I'm going to do it. Like, it's someone who is going to be very motivated, who does not need me to constantly be checking in. And then every week they're telling me, oh, I didn't do what you said. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Like, you've given me the plan, and I am going to go off there and execute. And I'm going to pay attention to everything that you're telling me. And they're going to go and read books before they even start working with me. They'll read Corporate Dropouts. They'll read whatever my next book is. They will download the lead magnets. They will show up in the groups. They will show up on the Facebook calls because they're interested in actually making a difference and not being spoon-fed. Because ultimately, everything that I'm teaching people is about taking responsibility and not handing over that responsibility to a coach, to a doctor, to a guru. I don't want to be your guru. I'm there to be your guide, but not a guru. And ultimately, that person, that ideal person that I want to work with, my dream person, is someone who recognizes her own power and just needs someone to help give her a little nudge here and there and just be like, am I getting it right? Yeah, you're actually doing really well. And then if they want to know more, I'll be like, here's something I can signpost you to. Here's another book. Here's a podcast. Here's something that you should be paying attention to, and that they're interested in it already. And it's not a chore to them. It's something that they could easily see probably even turning into another career or another passion.
Yeah, amazing. So somebody has committed to making that change. That's so important, because it's not like you're sitting in their fridge, right? And they open it and you're like, hands off the donuts. That's not going to happen, right?
Right. Yeah. And just to be clear, I have nothing against donuts. I actually really like them. But when you're on a protocol that's no sugar, no dairy, no gluten, it's not the best thing for you. It's going to set you back. So and it's not like you're going to never be able to eat these things again. It's just for a little while where we're cleaning things up and detoxifying. You need to avoid that. That's all. Yeah. And I'm not perfect. I like cake. Who doesn't?
Right.
So, wine.
It's about balance. So it's the repair, the cleanse, and the balance.
Exactly. And once we get to that point where things are back into balance, and like I said, at the start, it will be, okay, we got to cut all this out for a little bit, but it's not going to be forever. And if you think of your life in terms of it's a drop in the ocean of what's going on in your life, right? Like it is a drop. If you're going to live for another 20 years and this is going to give you life to your years, not just adding years to your life, then why wouldn't you spend 3 months just doing that and investing in it? Why wouldn't you do that?
Exactly. I agree. So what's next for you, Ray? What are you up to?
Moving country again. So that's part of being a digital nomad, just finding a new place to land and hopefully being in the same country as my husband very, very soon, because we have spent the last 3 years going, but we've been apart a lot of that time. COVID has made it really tricky for two people who are from two different nationalities to be together. So what's next is that I'll hopefully be in the same country as him, and I'll have the time and the space and the bandwidth to actually commit to the full length book. That's on the horizon for sure. But for anyone who is interested, I know you were saying, how could people who are not working, who are not in the same location, like they're not in the US or the UK, Australia, I have a 5-day mini course that I try to encourage people to jump on, because it's 5 days of little actions that you can take that can get you started. And then obviously feel free to join the Facebook group. There's regular lives in there, workbooks, different things that you can benefit from. So I'll constantly be adding and updating and making that environment really juicy so that there's always something you can sink your teeth into.
Amazing. Now tell me more about this solo book that you have on the horizon. What is it about? Who is it for? Where are you at in that journey?
This solo book, wow, that's been a huge undertaking. It's been on my mind. I actually wrote like a mini version of it in 2020. And it is based around the pillars of dress, but it's more like a manual. And that's all I'm going to say. It's a manual. So definitely something that's good. I've touched on it in certain places. There's little elements of it dotted around on my blog, or in that little mini course, a workshop that I do for corporates, because I still do a lot of corporate speaking and corporate work. And I wanted to turn it into something that people could actually take away, as opposed to, we watched that for 45 minutes and then it's done. So you can actually go home and do this over 12 weeks, and you could do it yourself.
Amazing. It sounds like
it's a DIY.
That sounds so good. And it's not like they leave the presentation and they fall straight back into their habits. They've now got a physical reminder sitting on the coffee table, wherever it is people keep their books, in the loo, on the bedside table, wherever it is, right?
I just want to say the idea is that there are going to be links to different videos as well. So there'll be a digital and a hard copy version, but there's going to be links to videos, to audios, all those sorts of things. So you'd be working with me, but you'd be doing it yourself.
So great. Sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to get my hands on one of those. Then how can people find you, Ray?
I am on well-works.co, WELL-WORKS.co. And you can also find me on Instagram as the Gutsy Executive Coach, all one word. The Facebook group, which we talked about before, I just want to plug that again. That's probably my favorite place to hang out, if I'm honest. Definitely my favorite place. There's a lot going on in there, lots of lives, lots of fun questions, and lots of cool people, and people who have been through some really interesting things. So they have wisdom to share as well. So back to that whole idea of community being a factor in your health journey. So being inspired by that. And I love hanging out there. So that's on Facebook. It's a Facebook group, and it's just called Well Works World. All one word.
Amazing.
Very simple.
I'm going to include all of those links in the show notes so that you can just go and click on those and go and hang out with Ray. She is simply amazing. I'm sure you can agree. Now, Corporate Dropouts is available for sale on Amazon, on the Four Eagles Publishing website. So go and grab a copy of that if you haven't already, and you'll get to read Ray's chapter along with my chapter and some other amazing women who have gone through corporate careers, decided it wasn't for them, and have started out on finding their passion, their purpose, their own entrepreneurial journeys. It's full of inspiration. I know that you're going to enjoy it. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with anyone else who can benefit. And if you are thinking of writing, publishing, or marketing a solo book or a multi-author book, I would love for you to come and find us at foureaglespublishing.com and see what possibilities are out there for you. I can't wait to see your dream book come to life so that you can inspire, impact, and ignite even more people Ray, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so grateful to have you in my life.
Thank you. I have totally loved this. I apologize for if you heard any background noise. We have a little storm brewing around here. It's that time of year, I guess. There's lots of wind, and if things falling over outside, I'm watching the wind. I'm like, oh, not so great. But yeah, appreciate you taking the time to ask me such wonderful questions and for sharing your platform with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll be speaking again soon, I'm sure. That's a wrap on today's episode. If you love the insights and inspiration, don't let it end here. Hit subscribe to stay connected and turn your visions into reality alongside our community of changemakers. I'm Tarryn Reeves. Thank you for joining me. And remember, your story has power. See you in the next episode.